All right, live stream starts at 7:25, 1 minute.
Vote Pilipinas, tara kumilos at makialam. Vote Pilipinas, para sa
Starting stream.
kinabukasan ng bawat isa. May pananagutan, alay natin para sa bayan. Ang boses mo'y gamitin, karapatan ang kinin. Heto na ang pagkakataon para makibahagi ang boto mo. Makapangyarihan, kaya magsama-sama para sa bayan. Vote Pilipinas, kumilos na, tara bumoto ka. Vote Pilipinas, makialam, makibahagi. Vote Pilipinas, kumilos na, tara bumoto ka. Vote Pilipinas, makialam, makibahagi para sa bayan. Para sa bayan. Vote Pilipinas, tara bumoto ka. Vote Pilipinas, tara kumilos at makialam. Vote Pilipinas, para sa kinabukasan ng bawat isa. May pananagutan, alay natin para sa bayan. Ang boses mo'y gamitin, karapatan ang kinin. Heto na ang pagkakataon para makibahagi ang boto mo. Makapangyarihan, kaya magsama-sama para sa bayan. Vote Pilipinas, kumilos na, tara bumoto ka. Vote Pilipinas, makialam, makibahagi. Vote Pilipinas, kumilos na, tara bumoto ka. Vote Pilipinas, makialam, makibahagi para sa bayan. Para sa bayan. Vote Pilipinas, tara bumoto ka.
How can you be an informed voter in the coming May 9 elections? Vote Pilipinas presents a one-stop dashboard of verified information for you. In the prevalence of fake news, information overload, the number of candidates and party list organizations to choose from, how can we make sure that we don't drown in information and we vote for the right candidate? Vote Pilipinas, the official information campaign partner of the Commission on Elections, brings you the Candidate Profile Dashboard, your one-stop information dashboard of candidates' profiles and other election-related news and verified information. The Candidate Profile Dashboard contains key information about the national candidates for
President, Vice President, Senators, Party List,
from their political and professional experience, the laws they've contributed, to their stand on key issues. To give you a better perspective of the candidate you are voting for. Visit www.votepilipinas.com to get comprehensive information on the candidates for the May 9 elections. Be an informed voter.
Hashtag bumoto ka, Hashtag para sa bayan, Hashtag Vote Safe Pilipinas.
Ito ang debating kukumpleto sa inyong desisyon. Sa panahon ng pandemya, kawalan ng trabaho, giyera. Ngayon, higit kailanman, napakahalagang suriin ang susunod na mamumuno sa ating bansa. Sino ang may totoong solusyon? Sino ang may konkretong plano? Sino ang tapat na maglilingkod? Kasama ninyo ang Commission on Election sa pagpantay at pagkilatis sa mga susunod na leader ng ating bansa. Dito ninyo malalaman Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Simulcast live nationwide and worldwide. March 19, Sabado, the Presidential Debate. March 20, Linggo, the Vice Presidential Debate. April 3, Linggo, ang ikalawang Presidential Debate. April 23, Sabado, the Vice Presidential Town Hall Debate. At April 24, Linggo, the Presidential Town Hall Debate. Kilalanin natin mabuti ang mga kandidato sa pagkapangulo at pangalawang pangulo dito sa pinakamalaki at opisyal na serye ng debate. Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point.
Metro Manila is still the world's worst city to drive in. That's according to the latest data. Metro Manila is still the world's worst city to drive in. That's according to the latest data.
Vote Pilipinas, tara kumilos at makialam. Vote Pilipinas, para sa kinabukasan ng bawat isa. May pananagutan, alay natin para sa bayan. Ang boses mo'y gamitin, karapatan ang kinin. Heto na ang pagkakataon para makibahagi ang boto mo. Makapangyarihan, kaya magsama-sama para sa bayan. Vote Pilipinas, kumilos na, tara bumoto ka. Vote Pilipinas, makialam, makibahagi. Vote Pilipinas, kumilos na, tara bumoto ka. Vote Pilipinas, makialam, makibahagi para sa bayan. Para sa bayan. Vote Pilipinas, tara bumoto ka.
How can you be an informed voter in the coming May 9 elections? Vote Pilipinas presents a one-stop dashboard of verified information for you. In the prevalence of fake news, information overload, the number of candidates and party list organizations to choose from, how can we make sure that we don't drown in information and we vote for the right candidate? Vote Pilipinas, the official information campaign partner of the Commission on Elections, brings you the Candidate Profile Dashboard, your one-stop information dashboard of candidates' profiles and other election-related news and verified information. The Candidate Profile Dashboard contains key information about the national candidates for
President, Vice President, Senators, Party List,
from their political and professional experience, the laws they've contributed, to their stand on key issues. To give you a better perspective of the candidate you are voting for. Visit www.votepilipinas.com to get comprehensive information on the candidates for the May 9 elections. Be an informed voter.
Hashtag bumoto ka. Hashtag para sa bayan. Hashtag Vote Safe Pilipinas.
Ito ang debating kukumpleto sa inyong desisyon. Sa panahon ng pandemya, kawalan ng trabaho, giyera. Ngayon, higit kailanman, napakahalagang suriin ang susunod na mamumuno sa ating bansa. Sino ang may totoong solusyon? Sino ang may konkretong plano? Sino ang tapat na maglilingkod Kasama ninyo ang Commission on Election sa pagbantay at pagkilatis sa mga susunod na leader ng ating bansa. Dito ninyo malalaman Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Simulcast live nationwide and worldwide. March 19, Sabado, the Presidential Debate. March 20, Linggo, the Vice Presidential Debate. April 3, Linggo, ang ikalawang Presidential Debate. April 23, Sabado, the Vice Presidential Town Hall Debate. At April 24, Linggo, the Presidential Town Hall Debate. Kilalanin natin mabuti ang mga kandidato sa pagkapangulo at pangalawang pangulo dito sa pinakamalaki at opisyal na serye ng debate. Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point.
Metro Manila is still the world's worst city to drive in. That's according to the latest data.
To our audiences joining us via Facebook and Zoom, thank you for being with us today. I'm your host, Jermaine Halandoni de Ruña, and I will be joining you this afternoon for the hashtag Bumoto Ka webinar series powered by Smart and Rakuten Viber. This series is a part of the entire hashtag Bumoto Ka campaign together with our other initiatives such as the candidate profile dashboard and the presidential and vice presidential debates. Justice is a concept of fairness where there is no room for discrimination. When principles of justice operate ineffectively or not at all, confidence in an organization or the society's institutions may be undermined. There is no clear framework for what successful social justice looks like in reality. Progress is feasible as long as the country prioritizes social justice and is devoted to equality. However, we can only attain justice if we have just people governing us. This is why we're inviting each and every one of you to join the call and say, hashtag bumoto ka para sa Katarungan. To help us unpack these issues, we gladly present and welcome our distinguished guests with us today. Our first panel is a member of the Maranao Indigenous Muslim group from the island of Mindanao, Lanao del Sur. He is a law graduate and a former gender and development supervising officer at COMELEC main office. He is now currently connected with the said agency as the election field officer for the Indigenous Peoples Sector Head. Siya ay naniniwala na ang bawat katutubong Pilipino ay may karapatang magparehistro at bumoto sa darating na halalan. Let's all welcome Sir Jal de Sumimba. Hi, Sir Jal. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And our second panel is the Chief of the Education and Training Division of the Human Rights Education and Promotion Office in the Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines. He is a visiting lecturer of the Ateneo de Zamboanga University and an active advocate of mental health in the workplace. Dr. Go finished his Bachelor of Science in Nursing at the Western Mindanao State University, the same institution where he obtained his master's in social work degree and later a doctorate degree in healthcare management from the University of the Visayas in Cebu City. Aside from being a teacher, he is also a registered nurse and a registered social worker. For his involvement with volunteer works in the community, Dr. Go has been awarded as one of the Senator Roselier T. Lim's 5 outstanding Sambuangueños young leaders in 2018. He is also a finalist of the Catalino and Benitez Iya Foundation CSR Youth Awards in 2020 and Outstanding Social Worker of the Philippines in 2022 by the Philippine Association of Social Workers Incorporated. Without further ado, let's all call on Dr. Jeric Go to share us his insights about the elections as a way to emphasize justice for human rights.
Thank you, Mr. May. Thank you, everyone. Allow me to share my slides. Once again, good afternoon sa ating lahat. I hope my slides are visible to everyone. With this, allow me to proceed. I was tasked to share with you insights on how voters can actually further strengthen the justice for human rights, especially to our first-time voters and most especially um, to our young voters at that. But before we proceed, there's actually this first question that we would like to reflect on. What is actually human rights? What are human rights? What are our human rights? What are your human rights? Di ba? Ang daming pagpo-position yan, but basically we're just talking about rights. And ang dami natin narinig sa paligid natin when we speak of rights. We have such rights as the right to work, right to housing, right to education, right to fair trial, right to food, right to health, especially ngayong pandemya. Yun nga yung nagtataka kami, most of us, human rights advocates, bakit madaming galit na galit sa human rights, ngunit hindi nila nakikita that everything that we're doing around us, everything that we're enjoying is actually human rights. And isa ito dapat sa nakikita nating platform ng ating mga kandidato, hindi lamang sa national, even down to our local candidates who are vying for different positions at that. Because when we, gaya ng kwa natin dito, social justice, it speaks of equality. And when we speak of equality, dapat lahat yan tayo ay meron at na-enjoy ng bawat isa sa atin. But basically, ano nga ba ang human rights? Diba? Kapag we're going to chop the two words, tao, we speak of humans, and then kapag ikuhan mo siya, itatranslate mo talaga karapatang pantao is just basically human rights. Lahat ng mga rights ng isang tao, tayo, di ba? As quoted by our first chairperson, the Commission on Human Rights, Jose Jokno, human rights are more than legal concepts. Hindi lamang siya basically ginagamit to conceptualize certain laws, no, policies at that. They are actually the essence of a man. They are what makes a man human. That's why they are called human rights. Deny them and you deny a man's humanity. Kahit isa lamang po dyan mawala, hindi mo na masasabing kompleto ang digdigdad ng isang tao. Kaya nga po ang hirap pong sabihin minsan na I am for gender equality, I am for women's rights, pero hindi naman ako pro-LGBTQI because iba yung aking paniniwala. Hindi po ganun yun. Kapag sinabi mong rights, dapat lahat ng karapatan ay iyong nirespeto. You are for that. Kasi ganun po yun. Equality po, dapat pantay-pantay po tayong lahat na enjoy po ang karapatan ng bawat isa. To a certain extent na hindi natin na-overlook ang rights naman ng bawat isa sa atin. Kasi our rights ends where the rights of others begin. So what are human rights? Na-define na po ito ng ating Supreme Court, no, sa Simon versus Commission on Human Rights. What are human rights? Human rights are the rights entitlements that we have because we are basically human. Ibig sabihin, it is innate. The moment that we were born, nabuo po tayo tao, may karapatan na po tayo at hindi po yan nawawala. Kahit tayo makulong, may karapatan pa rin po tayo. Kaya it's very important po na human treatment because everyone is human. As defined by UN, human rights are those rights which are inherent in person's nature and without which he or she cannot live as human being. That is why it's very important. So, ito po ay actually divide into two categories, yung ating civil and political rights, the right to life, yung karapatan nating mabuhay, right to equal protection of the law, right to political participation, which is part of our discussion this afternoon, ang karapatan nating bumoto at mamili ng sino iboboto at karapatan nating tayo mismo ang maboto or mahalal kung ninanais nating tumakbo, no? Right to freedom of thought, conscience, and then ang socio-cultural and economic rights, ito yung right to housing and adequate standard of living, right to health, right to food, right to education. Basically, ito pong aking mga dinaanan ngayong mga rights. Lahat po ito ay mga human rights. At these are very important aspects na dapat natin nakikita sa platform ng ating mga tumatakbong mga kandidatos, most especially those running for national positions, no, national offices, because dito po dapat natin binibase kung sino ba ang ating mga pipiliin sa darating na halalan. Ito po ay human rights at ito po ay dapat ang maging basis ng ating pamimili. Hindi lamang dahil sa pangalan, hindi lamang dahil sikat siya, but basically ano ang stand mo at ano ang mga feasible plans mo for the coming elections. Kasi yun po yung tanong natin lagi, okay, may plano ka nga, napakaganda ng mga promises mo. At the end of the day, tatanong natin, feasible ba yan? Will will it solve the problems that are set before us? Itong nakikita natin, ang mga kagutuman, ang mga kahirapan, di ba? So yun po yun, pag-increase na mabilihin natin, itong pandemyang ito, ang challenge sa education, ano ang solusyon na pwede mong maibigay, feasible plans for the people. Kaya napakahalaga po talaga because human rights is primarily a state obligation. Responsibilidad po ito ng mga nasa gobyerno. Kami po nasa gobyerno, we are what we call the duty bearers. And you, the public, we are addressed as rights holder. You enjoy the rights. And as duty bearers, it is our responsibility to do our work that you will be able to enjoy these rights that are inherent the moment that you were born, no? Because the golden rule naman natin in human rights is okay. Ano ba yung okay? Actually, may meaning po yung O, may meaning po yung okay. Hindi porket may human rights tayo, pwede natin gawin ang kahit ano. Siyempre may limitation siya. Because ang human rights, ang bawat karapatan ay may kaakibat na responsibilidad o obligasyon. Kaya po, it is very important for us to know when to exercise our rights at hanggang kailan may limitations to practice such rights. The moment na tayo ay nakapanakit na po ng iba, then it's already a violation of the rights of others as well. So pwede tayong ma-express as long as we know how to respect others. And with this, kapag sinasabi natin human rights, ito po'y dapat na naiintindihan ng bawat isa because sa panahon ngayon, kung saan napakataas po ng misinformation, historical revisionism, ang mga basis po natin hindi na po research. Ang ating mga ginugoogle ngayon ay actually hindi pa Google eh. Ang ating mga basis ngayon for data is TikTok na lang, no? Kasi easy access TikTok, social media, but they are not verified, which is very harmful to us, and is actually very funny to the public, to the general public, because parang ganun nagiging debate ngayon. According to TikTok, according to social media, according to Facebook, di ba? But at the end of the day, it's very important for us to go back to our roots, which is doing research. We need to check on the background of these people. Ano ba ang mga platform at ano ba ang kanilang mga binibenta? Because at the end of the day, before we invest, we should always investigate. And when we investigate, dapat nakikita natin ang mga platforms nila. Ano ba ang kanilang mga stand on issues that affects human rights, ang karapatan ng bawat isa sa atin. As mentioned earlier, yung po yung mga different rights po natin. At ano ba ang kanilang mga ano ba ang kanilang mga taya for such rights, no? So yun po yun. Human rights are not from the government and they are not from the law, but they are recognized by the law. That is very important. Kaya ang nasasaktan po kami on the part of CHR every time we hear na, ikaw ay nakulong, wala ka ng karapatan, nawawala yan. O di kaya, dahil ikaw ay nakasalanan, wala ka ng rights. Actually, lahat tayo may rights at hindi po yan nawawala. However, we are being limited because may mga batas po tayong dapat sinunod. Kapag hindi ka pa sumunod sa batas, edi may sanction po siya. Kapag hindi mo nagawang igalang ang karapatan ng bawat isa. Yun po yun. But at the end of the day, human rights is very important. Na kaya nga po, we are glad during sa second presidential debate po natin, we have seen that most of the presidential candidates, aspirants who were there, expressed their full support to programs that would strengthen human rights in the Philippines, most especially for the Commission on Human Rights. Mind you, the Commission on Human Rights is a constitutional commission. We are not under the executive branch of government, but we are what you call the conscience of government. We are responsible for making sure that the government is doing its mandate to protect and safeguard the rights of every individual. So we're glad that these presidential aspirants were able to put forward their intention na, oh yes, we will support you because we acknowledge that human rights is very important. We hope you were able to see by the brief definition that we share to you right now what is human rights, how important human rights is. The main fact that you are looking at us via Facebook or joining us via Zoom is that you are experiencing, or you are rather enjoying your freedom to participate in such an educational activity, and for you to be able to express yourself. So this are freedom, our freedom to express this. And with this, kung wala tayong freedom, yun po, malaking challenge po yun. That is why it's very important for us to acknowledge the importance of human rights, no? So based upon the 1987 Constitution, we had a new Constitution. No? Yung 1987 Constitution, there were safeguards in place as a result of the abuses that were raised during the martial law era. No? So because of the 1987 Constitution, it was made clear that the state shall value the dignity of every human person and guarantees full respect for human rights. Nandun po talaga. Kaya hindi po tama na tayo, ang government ay may inaabuso o di kaya ay nananakit ng mga tao, because it is really the sole responsibility of government to protect its people. The Congress shall give highest priority to enact measures that protect and enhance the right of all Filipino people, to human dignity. And of course, yung ating Bill of Rights, doon po nakasaad ang karapatan ng bawat isa, ang karapatan nating mabuhay, ang karapatan natin to enjoy our life. No? And these are just some of the basic human rights laws which were passed and we are all enjoying right now. And this is one of the proofs, these are some of the proofs that actually human rights is important. And because of this, most of us are enjoying this. Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act of 2008, the Magna Carta of Women, yung ating Anti-Torture Act, and others. So madami pa po. So these are just some of these laws. And because of this, ating pong ina-affirm that human rights is very important. Kaya nga po, it is very important na mapakinggan natin ano nga ba ang stand nitong mga tumatakbo sa different positions, most especially for the two highest positions in government as well as those running for Congress, no, the Senate, the lower house. We really need to understand what are your stands, especially for human rights. You cannot be silent. You cannot go for one right only and then be silent for the rest, because when we speak of human rights, it covers all. Social justice, gaya nga sabi ng ating moderator earlier, speaks of equality, speaks of dapat lahat pantay-pantay. Dapat lahat ito ay na-enjoy ng lahat. Hindi pwedeng itong isa lang ang area na gusto mo because ito ay base sa paniniwala mo or ng iyong partido. But you need to take into consideration what is really inherent by when you say human rights. We've already defined human rights, so dapat clear sa ating lahat ano bang human rights at paano ba dapat ito na-enjoy ng bawat isa sa atin. Now, with all of this that is happening right now, why do we need to discuss human rights? Most especially now that we are experiencing a lot of challenges, no? Ang isa sa mga challenges natin dyan is of course ang dami po nating nakikitang mga misinformation, disinformation, at kailangan po talaga as teachers, we really need to put forward ourselves to have the patience to educate, most especially our young. We need to go back to what is research. We need to be research focused, and we need to acknowledge that the reason why we're teaching is because there are people who are unaware of certain facts. So why do human rights education during this time for us to be able to promote social justice? Because people have the right to know their rights. The government has to know its responsibilities. Actually, nasasaktan po ako, may mga debates po akong nakikita na there are some politicians or some candidates who are running, they do not understand what is human rights. For me, that is very dangerous because they do not appreciate nor understand what is the concept of human rights, how people enjoy it. At the same time, they're already enjoying it, but they do not know that that is human rights, that is their rights. Nakakasad po yun. Kaya nga po, again, uulitin ko po, emphasis ko po dito, it's very important before we investigate the background, the stance of these people, because itong mailalagay natin sa posisyong ito, sila pong makasama natin for the next 3 years. Lalo na po ang ating President and Vice President for the next 6 years pa po yan sila. So it's very important na mamili tayo ng mahusay na mga taong ilalagay natin sa posisyon. Prevents abuses, encourages access to remedies, good for governance. And of course, through human rights education, we prepare the students and give them knowledge, good for schools, and may be included in their rankings and many other reasons. And last but not the least, after acknowledging this, we go and reflect amongst ourselves. Ano nga ba ang taya ko? After knowing what is human rights, what is the impact of human rights to society, most especially now during these trying times, ano nga ba ang pwede kong magawa? Based upon the data of our partners from COMELEC, there are around 67.5 million Filipinos who will be eligible to cast their ballots this coming May 9, 2022 elections, no? And out of the 62, there are 4 million adult Filipinos who are newly registered. So it's very important. We are appealing to all newly registered voters to please discern well. It's very important not only by discerning well but to influence others. Please come and vote and exercise your right to vote, your right to suffrage, no, for you to choose. Because bawat boto ay mahalaga. From you, doon natin ilalagay kung sino ang ating mga magiging leader for the next 6 years. But before you do that, please investigate well. Look at the background of these people. Screen your candidates. It's very important to check their credibility, political stance, the values, most especially their human rights. If they are human rights champions, no, you really need to look at that. Their qualifications, educational background, totoo bang ang kanila madinideclare, experiences, accomplishments, most especially feasibility of their plans. Yung po yung mahalaga. For the next 6 years, ano bang feasible sa kanila? Ano bang feasible na magawa before you investigate? Ano nga bang kaya ko? For this coming election, I'm sure every one of us already registered. Please continue to screen your candidates and vote for the best. It's very important when we say for the best, those who would be able to champion human rights. Kaya nga sabi natin, ay ang pinaka gustong-gusto ko pong quote na nakita ko duman sa aking feed, actually paulit-ulit siya, from a certain Gavin, year 2010, kapag namulat ka sa katotohanan, ang kasalanan na ang pumikit. So with this, I once again appeal to all our youth, most especially to the first-time voters, please, before you investigate, and please choose someone who is able to acknowledge the importance of human rights. And with this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Maraming salamat, Doc Jeric, for that very impassioned presentation. And it's a very good jump-off point, no, o foundation itong ating pag-uusapan ngayong hapon na ito. At gusto ko lang susugan yung sinabi ni Doc Jeric. Ang ganda na yung before you invest, you need to investigate, kasi nag-invest tayo ng hindi lang 6 years of our lives, no, kundi yung buhay din ng ating mga magiging anak at apo. So kailangan nating investigate kung sino ito yung mga ibipiliin nating mamuno sa ating bansa. And everyone is human, lahat tayo ay may karapatan. Alright, simulan na po natin yung ating kwentuhan. Pero I'd like to remind our audience here on Facebook and on Zoom na if you have any questions, please type them in our chat box for the people here on Zoom. And for those who are watching on Facebook, you may type it in the comment section and we will make sure to ask them to our panel members later. Alright. Simulan na po natin yung ating kwentuhan, yung ating discussion ngayong hapon na to. Sir Val and Doc Jeric, nabanggit no sa presentation ni Doc Jeric na ang daming issues pa rin ng human rights and the abuses na naranasan ng iba't ibang tao at iba't ibang sektor, no, na nabanggit nga na ang ating human rights, it's a very intersectional approach. Nais ko lang pong malaman, how have the past few administrations created changes in the improvement of protecting human rights? Nagkaroon ba ng significant na pagbabago at kagandahan sa mga programa that you can say have uplifted a human rights protection? I'll start with Sir Val. Ay, Sir Jal, sorry.
Okay.
You can hear me.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am? Hello?
Yes, clearly. Sige
Yes,
po, Sir Jal, go ahead.
Yes, we have a lot of changes in the past administrations. No, up to date, we have a consultation meeting with the stakeholders for the vulnerable sector, especially for the indigenous peoples. No, we have slowly reaching to vulnerable sector to hear their needs and issues. So we have actually collaborations with with some stakeholders and government agencies and people organizations to address their issues.
All right. Thank you, Sir Jal, for that. How about Doc Jeric? Ano po ba yung mga nagawang hakbang ng mga past few administrations to improve the protection of human rights?
Actually, ang dami naman pong na-pass I'd say for the past few administrations, ang dami po.
Yes.
Even this present administration, of course, we acknowledge naman yung mga batas, lalo na yung the right for the children, for the senior citizen, yung for the health, most especially mental health law, pinas po nito during this administration, which is very important po na during this trying times of the pandemic. And we give due credit as well to all the legislators who passed this law, who made this possible. Kasi pinag-aralan talaga ano pang mas mapapahusay. And we acknowledge na syempre, this will not become a full effect law kung hindi siya inapprove ng presidente. So hindi naman po siya binito. More or less inacknowledge niya na malaga ang makarapatang pantaong ito, kaya ito po ay naging batas. So we acknowledge all of these accomplishments.
Thanks, Doc Jeric. We were talking about nga po of human rights and how yung human rights lalo na this pandemic has been highlighted. It was put on the spotlight kasi ang dami nating mga kababayan na nahirapan during the pandemic, especially the minority groups, no? May mga basic sectors like the farmers, fisher folks, indigenous peoples, and women. Ano po yung mga specific na ginawa ng ating pamahalaan in order to take care and to improve yung human rights ng ating mga basic sectors, especially po from a local standpoint? I'll start with Doc Jeric naman.
Sa local standpoint naman, of course, I think our local government units are upholding yung mga BRAC natin, the Barangay Human Rights Action Centers. So through that, through our DILG, they've been conducting series of activities to promote further what is human rights. And in partnership, lalo sa mga IPs natin, we have the NCIP, the National Commission for Indigenous People. So we've been putting forward, government has been putting forward advocacy activities to reach out to the far-flung areas, yung mga nasa laylayan, kung ano pa ba ang, to teach them ano ba yung makarapatan nila and paano pa mas mapalaw pa ang kanilang scope for them to be able to understand and to be able to access the basic necessities that government has for them, the basic services that government has for them. So yun po yun, the government approach to the barangays. That is why it's very important when we select leaders that they will be able to implement these programs, that existing programs already mandated by law. It's very important that we choose people who are able to execute them properly.
Thank you po, Doc Jerry. Kailangan natin ng mga leader na kayang i-implement yun. At nakakailangan din po, nabanggit nyo, no? We have a lot of basic sector groups na hindi pa nila ganun kaalam yung kanilang karapatan at yung mga ibibigay ng ating pamahalaan sa kanila. So dapat magkaroon ng mas maayos na pakikipag-ugnayan para mabigay yung mga pangangailangan o yung basic needs ng ating mga mamamayan. How about Sir Jal?
Yun po, in coordination with the NCIP and IPMR, no, we have Indigenous People Mandatory Representative. In coordination with them, through our election officer sa field po, during the pandemic po, meron po tayong registration that time. So nagbaba po ang VSO, no, Vulnerable Sectors Office, to conduct a satellite registration for the Indigenous peoples, not only for the Indigenous people, but for the PDL, and persons with disability and senior citizens. No, they don't have to go to our field offices. No, kami na po mismo, yung mga field offices po ang pumunta sa kanilang community to make sure that makakapag-participate po sila sa ating election. No, to make sure na makapag-rehistro po sila. So we provide them a assistor, no, para po, kasi po yung iba po natin Indigenous peoples is medyo hirap po sila sa pag-fill up. So we provide them assistor para po mapabilis po ang ating proseso po sa ating registration during satellite registration po.
Alright, thank you, Sir Jal. No? Sir Jal, you mentioned a while ago yung PDL. Ito yung mga persons deprived of liberty. Tama po, no? Ito yung mga nasa kulungan natin, ng mga kababayan. Nakagaya nga na sinabi ni Doc Jeric, lahat tayo may karapatan. At karapatan natin yung pagboto kahit pa nakakulong ka pa. Sir Jal, may karagdagan akong question for you, specifically for the IP sector. No? How can we improve yung human rights protection ng ating mga IP, specifically on their safety and protection ng kanilang lands and culture? What are yung mga programs po ng ating opisina ng ating institusyon? And if you may know po naman, kung may kaalaman po kayo sa ibang programa po ng ating pamahalaan to protect rather the lands and culture po of our Indigenous people. And Doc Jeric din naman po, can share po. Sir Jal?
Okay, opo. So, sa amin po, sa COMELEC Vulnerable Sectors Office, before kami po mag-create ng polisiya or any policies na it affects the vulnerable sectors, no? we make sure na meron po kaming coordination with the locals or the indigenous peoples, the vulnerable sectors po, no? So we make sure na lahat po ng aming pulisiya ay nakabase po sa kanilang pangangailangan. Kinakausap po namin sila kung ano po yung kanilang pangangailangan regarding sa electoral process. Like for example po yung ating kanilang issue on accessibility, no? Yung pagpunta po sa kanilang voting center since malayo po ang kanilang lugar, no? They have to walk, no? They have to walk like an hour, 4 hours, no? So we make sure po na magkaroon po sila ng voting centers within their community po. So they don't have to go down para po bumoto, no? Doon na po mismo sa kanilang lugar, no? Community ang kanilang voting center. So marami po na tayong nagawang voting center ngayon. We have 37 accessible voting centers nationwide po.
Ayun, thank you, Sir Jal. Nakakatawa. It's a very consultative process po, no? Talagang tinitignan natin, inaalam yung pangailangan po ng ating mga kapatid po na katutubo at yung iba nga po na nasa vulnerable sectors. Doc Jeric, may karagdagan ka pa po bang nais ibahagi doon po sa question na iyon?
Yes, actually dun sa points rin, additional points po dun sa na-share ni Sir Jal is the IPRA law, no? Yung Indigenous People's Rights Act, yung ating IPRA. Basically, ang maganda dito is it puts forward the rights of our IPs, yung mga kapatid nating katutubo. And with this, yun na nga, gaya ng sabi ni Sir Jal, yung even until sa barangay level, importante na meron tayong mga representatives so that marinig na yung mga hinanaing ng ating mga kapatid na mga katutubo. They are considered kasi sa vulnerable sector. Especially yung mga issues natin on ancestral domains. Isa yung sa mga malaking challenge natin. Even until now, may mga areas pa rin na may mga challenges pa rin. So it's very important na actually isa to sa mga dapat na dinidiscuss rin ng ating mga candidates lalo na ngayon because although hindi affected ang ilan sa atin dahil malayo tayo at hindi tayo part ng IP community, but as Filipinos, it's very important for us to understand bakit natin kailangan dinidiscuss ito because at the end of the day, we are all part of the same country, the Philippines. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Doc Jerry. Tama po yung aking pagkakaintindi. Isa sa mga safeguards para sa ating mga katutubong Pilipino ay yung first prior informed consent. No, kung paano bago ma-develop ang kanilang kalupaan o yung kanilang lupang ninuno, kailangan muna ng pagpapaalam sa kanila. Kailangan may consultative process kagaya nga ng ginagawa nila Sir Jal dyan sa COMELEC. So talaga para mapangalagaan at make sure na hindi maapakan, matatapakan ng kanilang mga karapatang pantao. Alright. So ito nga po, no, nabanggit natin, parating elections, you only have 31 days left. At ang dami, various issues po have arose, no, that pertains to human rights violations. How can we po as a society in our position as voters be able to protect and uplift human rights, specifically the basic sectors of women, children, IP, farmers, fisher folks, and ensure that we are progressively protecting these sectors from any future violations? I'll start with Sir Jal.
Yun po, ma'am, yung aking nabanggit kanina, no? Progressive po siya, no? We have actually, meron po tayong mga nakapending na request for the creations of accessible voting centers and separate polling places. This is to address the accessibility, the illiteracy, and discrimination, no, that the vulnerable sectors are facing nowadays, no. So for the separate polling places, for the creation of separate polling places where there is existing voting centers, no, so naka-mix po yung ating mga indigenous people there. So to address the discrimination that they are facing, no, gagawa po tayo ng separate polling place, separate po yung classroom nila, doon po sila boboto. So hindi po sila pupunta po sa mga non-IPs po. So they have a classroom. So and then to make sure din po, actually po ma'am, ngayon we have a voters education. Ongoing po yung aming voter education. Right now we conducted voter education in Bulacan, Aurora, and then Palawan, Tibuli, and then yun po. So kami po mismo ang bumababa to make sure po, no, to make sure po na yung kanilang mga issue, no, ay aming matugunan, kami po mismong bumababa sa kanila para makipag-usap po sa kanilang issue po. Kasi po minsan po mahirap din po na may dumadaan sa iba, tapos po medyo nag-iiba na po yung konteksto ng kanilang yung kanilang mga problema. Like marami po kaming marami po silang na-address sa amin na issues, no, regarding yung pagboto po, pagtakbo sa election. So yun po.
Right. Before Doc Jeric answers the question, may karagdagan po akong follow-up question ako sa iyo, Sir Jal. No? May question mula sa ating manonood dito from Zoom, si Nilo Taganahan. You mentioned kanina yung assessor, di ba? Para po doon sa ating mga katutubong Pilipino, sa ating mga kapatid na katutubo. May ngilan-ngilan nga daw po, no, na hindi marunong magbasa. So sino bang mag-fill up sa voters form? And how does yung assessor, how does it work? The assessor's system po na gano'n? Para po maliwanagan yung ating mga manonood.
Yes po, ma'am. Actually, it's part of our voters education po, no? Kasi po marami pong nagtatanong regarding the assessor po, kasi medyo yung iba daw hindi sila ina-allow, no? So yung assessor po natin, pwede po yung within 4th civil degree po, no? Yung kapatid, hanggang first cousin. So kung wala po yun, pwede po mag-assist sa atin yung ating mga kasama sa bahay, no? Kasama sa bahay. And then kung wala din po, pwede po tayong magpatulong sa ating EBs, no? Electoral Board, or ang ating mga support staff, no? Sa lahat po ng ating mga special polling place, we provide 2 support staff po, no? Na sila po yung mag-assist sa ating mga vulnerable sector po, no? Kung wala po silang assistors. So, ganun po namin kamahal ang ating mga vulnerable sectors, no? Nag-provide po kami ng assistor for them in case na wala po silang mga kamag-anak or kasama sa bahay, or kung mag-isa lamang sila po.
Thank you, Sir Jal. And Sir Nilo, I hope na nasagot ni Sir Jal yung katanungan. Doc Jeric, ano naman yung kasagutan mo doon sa question that I asked before po, na how can we as a society, especially our position as voters, be able to protect and uplift all human rights and ensure that we are progressively protecting these sectors from any future violations?
Yes, actually, Ms. Germaine, no, ito na yung time for us to be able to take back the power, no? Syempre tayo maghahala ng new set of officers for the next few years. And with this, before we place, rather, the best thing to do is to place the best people in position, and by doing so, we will be able to make sure that whoever will be placed in the position, they are the ones who can assure us that they will be looking after the rights of the people, especially those in the marginalized sectors. Kaya nga po, these activities, we're very glad with our partners dito sa Vote Pilipinas. Di ba may mga activities tayo that we put forward, yung mga platforms ng ating mga candidates is very important. High time po. That's why we are appealing to all of our viewers. Please take time to listen to all of this, to look at mamili tayo ng maayos. Ano ba ang kanilang mga stand? Ano ba ang kanilang mga pinaglalaban? And from there, malalaman natin kung kanilang mga promises ba ay feasible. At the end of the day, if these are feasible, at ito ba ay alam natin makakabigay ng solusyon sa mga problemang na naharap ng ating bansa ngayon. So yun po yun. At the end of the day, before we invest, ulit po ako dyan, hanggang mamaya po, hanggang mabingi po kayong lahat, before we invest, we always need to investigate by looking at the platforms of these people. And if these platforms are really feasible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc Jeric. No, yung binabanggit nga ni Doc Jeric, we have a lot of initiatives here on Vote Pilipinas. It's a candidate profile dashboard. You just have to check our website and tignan, nakikita na natin doon, no, yung mga laws that they've contributed to, the laws that they've passed, and yung kanilang talagang curriculum vitae, ika nga, no, yung kanilang qualifications, kung they are fit to lead our country. Doc Jeric and Sir Jal, we have another question here from our friends on Facebook. This one is coming from Michael Lance Dumagas. Ang tanong niya po, should the government prioritize human rights education to prevent fake news and disinformation about human rights? Okay, I'll repeat it. Should the government prioritize human rights education to prevent fake news and disinformation about human rights? Thanks, Michael Lance, for asking that question. Sir Jal?
Hello.
Sir? Apo, go ahead po. Can you hear us? Okay, medyo may technical difficulties ang yata si Sir Jal. Sir Jal? Okay. I'll ask na lang po muna si Doc Jeric. Doc Jeric, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, human rights education should be one of the priorities of government at that, because it is stated in the Constitution, it's mandated that we should be discussing human rights in all platforms. We should celebrate it because it is a right that should be enjoyed by everyone. What is very sad is that we're enjoying it, but we're not recognizing that it is human rights. It is our rights already. So it is very important for us. That is why even on the part of CHR, we are strengthening our position on how we will be able to put forward human rights education. That is why we partner with the different higher education institutions. We partner with CHED, with DepEd on how we could best put forward the rights, especially those sa mga kabataan, no, the values formation. Doon po tayo dapat nagsisimula. We really need to revisit the curriculum and how we could further put forward yung mga values natin, kasi pag nawawala na. Minsan kasi sa social media, ginagawang katawanan yung pagdi-disrespect sa mga elderly na akala ng lahat ay normal na, di ba? Kailangan natin ma-revisit itong mga values natin as Filipinos. It's very important. Part po talaga yung alalang panlipunan, part po siya ng human rights. Values formation, GMRC, part po siya ng human rights. So we really need to make it as a priority for us to be able to have a better Philippines at that. Because from there, we will be able to understand the importance of respecting the rights, our rights, the rights of others, and from there we could be able to have a more progressive Philippines, a Philippines wherein we will be able to lift each other together, so that we will be able to have so that we would be able to achieve all of our aspirations for a better country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc Jeric. Sir Jal? I hope okay na po yung inyong mikropono.
Yes, ma'am. Opo. For me, ma'am, yes, kailangan po siya because like for example, ma'am, when we go down to to our stakeholders, ma'am, the indigenous peoples, no, wala po silang idea kung ano po yung rights nila, no? Parang during our voter education, ma'am, na parang napaluha po kami lahat, ma'am, kasi po when I discussed the constitutions that they have all the rights to participate in our electoral process, like for example, the right to vote and be voted, no? Parang and there's no need, wala pong kailangang yaman, no, para lang makapag-participate. So parang doon, ma'am, from there, nag-question po sila, ma'am, na, Sir, bakit po kami sinasabihan na we don't have a right to participate since wala po kaming pinag-aralan and wala daw po kaming pera. So parang from there, ma'am, kailangan po talaga nilang, kailangan po natin paalam sa kanila po kung ano ang kanilang mga karapatan bilang isang mamamayang Pilipino po.
Salamat po. Sir Jal, nakakalungkot nga no, na dahil sa mga ganong klaseng misinformation, parang naagaw din, no, na disenfranchise din sila sa kanilang mga karapatan. Before we let you go po, no, before we end our discussion, I'd like to ask you po for your closing message to all of our viewers on how we can protect our human rights in any way that we can po. I'll start with Sir Jal.
Yun po. Here in COMELEC, the COMELEC seeks to ensure the protections and preservations of the right to suffrage of the indigenous peoples and strengthen their participation in the electoral process. So for us po, kailangan po natin makipag-coordinate po, no, sa amin kung ano po yung inyong mga issues po. We have our emails or Facebook account po, no. Marami po kaming nare-receive doon na mga complaint and all. So ito po ay aming tinitugunan po, no. So from that po, sana po ma-reach po kami ng mga, although po ang mga ating mga indigenous people ay hirap po sila sa ating social media, no? Wala po silang accessibility sa ating social media. That's why sa ating VSO, kami na po ang bumaba sa kanila dahil po wala po silang signal, wala po silang kuryente. So with the help of our IPMR, no, nakikipag-coordinate po sila sa amin. So marami po kaming proyekto sa mga darating pa po na registrations and halalan po. So by that, sana po dumami pa po ang ating mga indigenous peoples na mag-participate sa ating election.
Thanks, Sir Jal. Sir Jal, you mentioned you have a Facebook page po, no? Ano po yung Facebook page natin so they can reach you po?
Vulnerable Sectors Office po.
Okay, Vulnerable Sectors Office. You can find that po on Facebook. Thank you, Sir Jal. Doc Jeric?
Yes po, Mr. Main. So una sa lahat, again, I would like to thank Vote Pilipinas for the invitation for us to be able to share insights. No? And then second, we would like to appeal to all our first-time voters, most especially our youth, who will be casting their votes this coming May 9, 2022 elections. No? Again, we invite you to investigate, paulit-ulit ako, look at the platforms of these candidates. It's very important for you to know because we just don't go for the names of these candidates. We also need to understand what are they selling? What will they do in the next 6 years when they will be when they will be leading the country? It's very important. And at the end of the day, we continue to appeal that we continue to be champions of human rights. Ngayon, alam nyo na kung anong human rights. Let us continue to be champions and advocates and defenders of human rights because by being advocates of human rights, we could be assured that everyone continues to respect the dignity and the rights of every individual. And as well as like Sir Jal, we would also like to invite you to like our page, Facebook page. We have, just visit www.facebook.com/CHRGovPH, as well as www.facebook.com/Human Rights Institute PH. Sa Human Rights Institute PH po, doon po namin pinopost yung ating mga free online courses po. We also offer that human rights courses. So please feel free to join us doon. Libre po yun. So again, we invite everyone to join us and continue to be champions of for human rights. Thank you very much po.
Maraming salamat po, Doc Jeric. And thank you, Sir Jal Dusamimba of COMELEC and Doc Jeric Go of CHR for joining us this afternoon. Ang dami ko pong nagtunan and I'm sure pati po yung ating mga manonood ngayon ay mas lalong ginanahan bumoto para sa katarungan at para sa human rights ng hindi lamang nila kundi ng ating mga kapatid po. No? Maraming salamat. So that's all what we have for you today. Thank you so much to our viewers here on Zoom and Facebook for staying with us until the end. So gaya na sinabi ko, I've learned a lot at definitely alam po natin na natutunan din po yan ng ating mga manonood ngayon. And like what I mentioned earlier, we still have 31 days before the May 9 elections, which means 31 days more to gather the right information to assess the candidates running for office. Kagaya na sinabi ni Doc Jeric, before you invest, you have to investigate. So Vote Pilipinas po has various ways that you can learn more about the upcoming 2022 national elections. First off, you can head on to votepilipinas.com and check out the candidate profile dashboard for all the information you need about the candidates. And we're not stopping there. Make sure to stay tuned to the upcoming webinars in the coming few weeks. With our next 2 webinars, that's hashtag bumoto ka para sa kababaihan and hashtag bumoto ka para sa kakilanlan. This coming April 13, 2022. And that's not all. Catch the Vice Presidential Town Hall debate on April 23, Saturday, and the Presidential Town Hall debate on April 24, Sunday. You may catch it live online on TV and on radio. And stay updated on the latest about Vote Pilipinas activities such as the Pilipinas debates, caravans, and more by joining the Vibe with the Nation with Vote Pilipinas community channel on Viber. Simply scan the QR code on the screen in front of you and join the community for a clean and safe election. And as we continue to spread awareness for voters' information, we at Vote Pilipinas hope that you can join in and be part of our advocacy. In partnership with Canva, we are offering all of you who have finished today's webinar for a free 3-month subscription to Canva Pro. So make sure to use the code CanvaXVotePH on the screen. Again, it's CanvaXVotePH. Take note, this code can only be redeemed until May 21, 2022. Again, you can redeem this until May 21, 2022. And you can also find Vote Pilipinas through various social media pages. On Facebook, just search for the verified Vote Pilipinas page. On Instagram, Twitter, you may follow us at Vote Pilipinas. Again, for Instagram, Twitter, you can follow us at Vote Pilipinas. And subscribe to the official Vote Pilipinas YouTube channel and stay connected with us to be updated on the Vote Pilipinas campaign. As election day draws closer and closer, we as Filipinos have the responsibility to create changes in our society today. Sa daan ng katarungan, maaari tayo na gumawa ng mabuti para sa ating bansang Pilipinas. Kaya hashtag bumoto ka para sa katarungan ngayong 2022 national elections. Hashtag bumoto ka this May 9, 2022. Gaya nga ng sinabi ni Kapay Pedyokno, no cause is more worthy than the cause of human rights. Muli, ako po si Jermaine Halandoni de Ruña. Maraming salamat po.
Ito ang debating kukumpleto sa inyong desisyon. Sa panahon ng pandemya, kawalan ng trabaho, giyera. Ngayon, higit kailanman, napakahalagang suriin ang susunod na mamumuno sa ating bansa. Sino ang may totoong solusyon? Sino ang may konkretong plano? Sino ang tapat na maglilingkod? Kasama ninyo ang Commission on Election sa pagbantay at pagkilatis sa mga susunod na leader ng ating bansa. Dito ninyo malalaman Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Simulcast live nationwide and worldwide. March 19, Sabado, the Presidential Debate. March 20, Linggo, the Vice Presidential Debate. April 3, Linggo, ang ikalawang Presidential Debate. April 23, Sabado, the Vice Presidential Town Hall Debate. At April 24, Linggo, the Presidential Town Hall Debate. Kilalanin natin mabuti ang mga kandidato sa pagkapangulo at pangalawang pangulo dito sa pinakamalaki at opisyal na serye ng debate. Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point.